Censor. Not human sound. Oh. That's good. Nobody was like, saw them walking. So loud, not nice, nobody was paying attention.
Today the weather. But there's also burning.
So I like the
Is survival. I was talking about you are you like you know so that you can user message is not like true change. So it's but it allows like your community to just I was talking about having some time right now for the pool.
Not yet. I will get you back. I think you sent me an email.
I think just
okay. So
You're gonna have to ask that.
which is they were
Alright, you should ask.
Yeah.
Gonna introduce yourselves?
Yeah.
It only goes one way.
Or, yeah. Yeah, but whatever. Like, hey, it's gonna be fun. Yeah, just tomorrow. Okay. Where are we going? And that's it.
Are like society.
Yeah. They don't have any. Wednesdays. They're playing Creed. Like they were Spice World, which is yeah, that's on right now. They're playing. Yeah. I don't know. I would say okay. I want you to know because they give shame.
I know.
This okay? Is that enough? I mean, it's 3 months.
They're building but of course. Yeah. Good, Ann. Back. No one I know. I feel like you're selling. They're the ones who. Look, actually, coat hangers. You
Okay. Yes, Jason. Part of the line. Okay.
You try to get yourself. I can tell. Okay, good to see you. I put the one thing that I know that I like.
We're gonna start.
We got so we don't. If you have to, but grab something crazy.
No, I'm good.
Do you know anywhere else we need? I put it on the page. Do you need to send it by email?
I mean, good. It should be here.
Can you send it?
That might be
It wasn't. She started playing it like. Check it out. Oh yeah, and it's Jason. I don't know what the deal is.
Just links here.
I mean, if you just.
I'm gonna try it on another computer. The only link I have. Try it. No, you want to live stream from another computer. No, it works.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's working. Are you introduced?
oh, Chris.
Chris said I should.
We should go.
Can you? Where are you guys? Right here.
Yeah. Yeah. We back.
Chat. You want me to shoot something? Okay. Why don't we fill this space up? Front row, everyone grab on their soy milk and coffee. We are about to. Want to sit down?
I will fight you.
Okay. So welcome to the day. We have two most renowned, impressive out-of-town now. These have collectively powerful users in the world. The Secretary to Christie, who's infamous Administration Crate Bill, and even President Bill Johnson disrupted a large political, and they're going to be sharing about disrupting the disrupt them, how, and what the future. What our strategy? Getting animal rights is a real political issue. So I could go on and on about, but just briefly, activists and organizers for DHC stuff. All right. He's not only but to travel around the Bay Area to ship this across the country. He's in New Haven, Connecticut, as the founder in New Haven, Connecticut, and is visiting us now. Hopefully, will come permanently starting in 2015. So, but without further ado, these two take it over. I don't know. What's somebody going to do?
We go meetups, giving people also a bit of sense of anybody who's in space. This is the DX. It's space activists and come and community running during our meeting. Let's give a bit of a rights world. So news that's happened lately. Some people made part of the horses. So 145 is new data proposal, which horses there, and so definitely been a lot of that steel. People are very proud. That actually does quite a bit of East Coast.
Not through the grapevine, but people are pretty upset. The mayor saying that he was going to visit now. The bill, that's one of the measures to protect horses. A huge new state, which really just lasts a little longer, and like amazing that a campaign from it. But it's pretty.
And then there was a cow fled a slaughter by animal rights activists. I believe a blog on our website as well, and that was really cool. So the news on that pretty shows a lot of agency for the active participants. It's not human. There's a lot of animals who rights as well. And another thing, that area of Canada, I don't remember the province, but okay. That said that a human right isn't the frame that, you know, like a right for all being safe and happy. It's not necessarily like this thing. Interesting to see is making it more mainstream area politics, and so just another interesting.
Can I suggest that you go on live stream set?
Yep, we'll do. So we're going to open one of the I'm having internet issue. My stream. Yeah.
Are you? This should work.
It's got caption. How does Matt say it live?
Somewhere.
Under speaker.
So here we
And then, well, then from this.
I think the audio is very low.
Yeah, no, I would want to switch until actually bad. And, about that. Something like that happens, man, I feel right about it.
No. And I love seeing react. I really sympathize with, sadly for you, but most of our audience is very good and see that reaction. I think it's a good game. So.
Scares you just as much as people in Iowa. Their bag.
So I'm going to be talking about why these big event disrupt context and some social sign that, and then talking about that. And I'll also have some things from the few things. So just want 3 volumes. Kitty, Rebecca,
Pumping. Hey.
Okay.
Come on.
So I'm going to be talking about something known in economics as common knowledge, which exists when there is some that everyone, not only does everyone knows that everyone knows that everyone knows that. And so I'm going to be writing either an X on a Post-it note and putting it on each of their forehead. I'm going to play a little. Please do not tell them what. No, you didn't see it. And you can hold it on your forehead. It's not going to stay. Okay. You get each other's for communicate with each other. And look and see what.
Look at each other's.
Yeah. So. Without have to know. Okay, does Rebecca know? Do you have any idea? No, it's on her forehead. Like, Wendy has it's on her forehead, right? Okay, and name again, I'm sorry. Yeah, what's on his forehead. So I'm gonna one little, and this is, and the fact is that at least has it on their forehead. Just one person on their forehead. Okay. And each of you,
Okay.
and whether you what's on your forehead, and I'm gonna also help make it a little bit.
Surprise!
I got.
Don't look. Don't tell him.
So has an X in their forehead. Rebecca, what's on your forehead? Now, knows that at least one person on her forehead. If both of them have her head, she has on her forehead. Yeah, look at their foreheads. Do you know if you want?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we go to Kitty, and Kitty knows if she an X on either their forehead. Has to have an X on her. But anything else knows back up. Answer didn't know. He saw on one of their two. No, it's not going to repeat this, that Rebecca did not say she didn't. She did not see an X.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's turn this around to an O. He, on his forehead, he would know she has an X. Rebecca has other foreheads. Okay. Sees it on his forehead. So, Kitty, on her forehead? No idea. So, Kitty, do you know? She doesn't know. Okay. So, because Rebecca said Rebecca had an X on one of the, okay? Now, Kitty if he had an O. See, so, if she didn't know, have to be an X. He would know she had an O. Then I don't know. That means that he has to have an X. So I say his forehead, and he says, "I do know."
An X.
And what about the dynamic that he had an X on his forehead? What did I just? That one little fact. Someone has an X on their. Think about this. Looking around, Ray and Rebecca could see X's on their foreheads. So that no. Does anyone know about what I introduce something more that there's an X? No. Okay. This is common knowledge. Not only at least on forehead. Did that someone had an X on their that Kitty knew had an X on their forehead. Knew that Kitty knew that's forehead. And that Peyton knew. And on and on. And so that state effect where Peyton can figure out he has an X on his forehead based on what they know. So now this is an odd way to, and you can have a C The reason I brought this up, norms are one particular variety. So, social norm that say please and thank you is because to say please and thank you, everyone else knows to do. We know that everyone else knows that, so we know us, and that's how everyone else around us. And our job is to social norm that animals is okay, and to our own social norm. And so, do is a form and form of common knowledge, rather than feeling that it is okay as animals and everyone knowing everyone knows that everyone knows. We want to create everyone knows that everyone knows. Everyone knows that you could imagine way this by imagining coming people. We can take the understanding, okay, to use at a very basic level. You know, believe to exploit animals, and you're going into a new group of people. We're probably going like we do now. We're not going to be animals. We're not going to. We're going to show respect. But the dynamic's going to be probably less on go. Might be a little bit less careful. You're going to feel act a lot differently with. Not only do you feel that one to use. So here we have that. But coming into here, knowledge that not this room with us that it's not animals knows that everyone believes that. So ourselves do violate this. No, we know that into what we're talking about disrupting is that we think about us as having a number of one, you big public figure, Bill Sack and show people care about an issue that's going to come back to. Two, you inspire. Three, you make a large see this issue. A large number of people in this issue. Number of people, number of people. Large group of people, large group of people, and counter. This is the defining media. Cultural criticism about how going to a movie and a movement phenomenon at home because everyone knows that everyone. Disrupting offers an opportunity a large number of people that this is a portion of the that CNN has just I jump up and the animals want to live that and needs to support it. So the early 20s H.L. Mencken, their voice, which might be looking. Basic idea is that as I was talking in here, when everyone knows that there's a certain expectation, it only changes
So these sort of social cascade, mass event, attitudes, because everyone knows that everyone knows that everyone knows that everyone has seen this. And so we know not only that there is this vibrant movement going on, but we know that everyone else knows this and has expectations of the way we act and the way we behave based on it. So it's not only that we are concerned with police violence on its own, but we know that everyone else expects us to share that concern. And there are also very negative examples of these sorts of social cascades. So Wayne's article in the Red Guards, these sorts of phenomena work with everyone knowing that everyone knowing that everyone knowing that everyone has this expectation that we have views in lockstep with the majority position. So obviously we don't want to create that dynamic, but social cascades are a very useful tool for stigmatizing and making clear what the norm is, and also for disrupting social norms that are set in stone, like that it is okay to exploit animals however we want. So Matt is now going to talk about how to trigger these cascades using big events.
All right, thanks, Zach. I'm Matt Johnson. Matt, right place, right time Johnson. Okay, so I'm going to go through, I'm going to kind of talk about the process of going through a big event, basically start to finish, based on pretty much what my experience has been. So the first thing you're obviously going to want to locate an event, and that's pretty much just a Google search, like whatever is, whatever you think would be relevant. Something I usually will do like events or political events. Iowa's was pretty easy because there's the primaries coming up, so there's way more events than I could even think about touching. The Bay Area is kind of like the opposite of that, where because there is such a, it kind of has this reputation as a progressive area and an animal rights centered area, there's not very many events. So I think the way I interpret that is that it's that much more important to jump on whatever opportunities do come along, because in this community, you know, like what Zach's talking about, the cascading, the social norms, like that really has a chance to take hold, versus in Iowa, people kind of hear this message one time and there's nobody in their immediate circle that's going to reinforce that. I'm one person, and you know, there's not a whole lot of people like me around. So yeah, definitely something, and actually I've talked to Wayne and different people, and would be a good idea to have kind of somebody locally, if anybody wanted to step up and kind of be like the big events person, to kind of keep an eye on these things and keep that conversation going. I think would be a really good step for this chapter specifically. Okay, and once you kind of decided on an event, you're going to want to work with a mentor if you've never done it before, because you're going to have about 1 million questions. In my case, it was Zach that pretty much walked me through every step of the way, and like like literally with the Chris Christie thing, there was almost no detail that was of my own. I just stepped in and took the attention at the last minute, kind of deal. But yeah, as far as with a mentor, I personally would, if anybody kind of was in this situation, had questions, you could reach out to me. I think Zach would be a good resource too, or just kind of ask around, whatever you need to do as far as that goes. Planning well in advance is definitely key as far as people trying to clear out their schedule, and as far as you're going to want to order a banner, and or usually depending on what it is, but generally speaking, the visuals of a banner is a lot more key than the spoken word, and that's what the media is going to grab onto. Like when we watch the Chris Christie video, that's the question I asked is nice because it gets around like DXC will circulate that on the internet, but 1,000 times more people just saw the guy on stage with the banner. That's what all the TV picked up, was just the visual of the banner. And so you really want to keep that very focused message centered on the animals, because if you go back to that banner, it said Governor Christie, it's not food, it's or Governor Christie, animals want to live, it's not food, it's violence. And we stuck with that. And me coming in initially, I was, it's kind of like, well, can we say something about gestation crates, say something about climate change, yada, yada, yada. But if you give the media any sort of an in like that, they're going to immediately go that route. That's the narrative they want to run with, because that's like the mainstream, quote unquote, progressive view would be those sorts of things. So they'll totally silence the animal's voice any chance they get. So we can't give them that opportunity. Oh yeah, and another thing, you definitely 100% want to memorize your lines going into it. You're going to be terrified. It's going to be scary no matter what. So that's one thing you definitely want to have down. I kind of rehearsed stuff hundreds of times, and then they threw a loop at us anyway, so I wasn't expecting to be in the form of a question. And yeah, a little bit of nervousness came out there, which Kitty so eloquently subtitled. And if you can, it's always better to get legitimate like access through tickets, or even if you have an opportunity to be like a volunteer or something like that, where you can get in without having to kind of sneak or force your way into it. That's going to be a lot better than, the more legit you can be for as long as you can be legitimate without, raising flags is definitely going to be better off.
I would just jump in there. I think at this point, there was an event recently, I wouldn't say which one, but I think oftentimes you're left with trying to either sneak in with some sort of disguise, or trying to just sort of like barge in, like Matt jumping on the stage. And you're going to have to do that to some degree, but you want to have as legitimate a way in as possible. Just going to make it safest legally, just practically. It's going to increase the likelihood of you pulling it off. We had an event where I was backstage for about 3 hours beforehand successfully, but eventually they cut on and I was not supposed to be there because I had no credentials. So if you can have those credentials, it's going to make it so you can stay a lot longer than 3 hours.
Okay.
What did they say to you?
They, I was with several other people who most people in this room will know, and we were just hanging out, and there was someone who had invited us into this nice cozy room. They really liked us, and then some manager of this event started coming over and saying, what are you doing here? And we had brought in like refreshments, and we had been there under the guise of passing out refreshments. So people really liked us, and I just said, we're passing out refreshments. I said, who are you passing out refreshments for? And I said, oh, we're just passing out refreshments. He just sort of laughed and walked away, but it happened a couple more times, and finally we cut and ran. And if you can have legitimate access, it's going to make that way easier.
But it's not nearly as exciting. Okay. All right. So on the actual day of the disruption itself, physical preparation, getting plenty of sleep for mental clarity, if at all possible. I know the Chris Christie one in particular. Like I couldn't sleep. It didn't really work. I tried to get a lot of sleep, but I was too antsy. But if at all possible, try to get good sleep and eat right. Be well prepared as far as that goes. To whatever event it is, you're going to want to arrive very early, not only to get good seats, if depending on what it is, but you want to be able to kind of scope out the scene, see where, what kind of access points you're dealing with, what the presentation is, what the security is, and amongst the activists yourself, like I found it really helpful to like get into position as far as your seat, and then from that point on, if you have an hour, even like 2 hours, where you can kind of keep this dialogue going, like, okay, either via text or if it's a group, even like a Facebook chat, excuse me, and just work out every detail. This is what I'm going to do. You're going to say this. I'm going to do this. Just so everybody's exactly on the same page. The more prepared you're feeling, the better you're gonna feel about it. The better it's gonna come out as.
One thing I would add is you don't let this get in the way of pulling it off. But when you're communicating and writing, you should do that under the presumption that everything you're saying can be discovered in court. So you don't want to say anything in writing that could get you in a position of legal risk.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I mean, they other than kind of. I guess the thing it's the yeah. But, yeah. Watch what you're saying, but I guess the disruption itself will kind of be made clear. Will be obvious. Okay. And yeah. So one thing that Zach has always thrown at me, which I've definitely found to be true, is there's always a curveball that's thrown at you. Murphy's Law. Like, just go in with the mentality knowing like this isn't going to be a nice clean thing. Something's going to be thrown off. Something's going to be different. Security's going to change it up on you. Chris Christie is going to come out there and start taking questions instead of his speech. Like, it's just going to be different, and you just have to be prepared. Like, okay, we're going to take a few deep breaths, make decisions on the fly, and do what we got to do to pull it off. And one thing, actually, can you pull up the clip? So, one thing that I really think, like, there's just a point for me, you kind of make this mental decision to where you just.
Here's what I want to say to you.
Actually, yeah, don't play it.
Here's what.
So with like the Chris Christie one and the the Thanksgiving Day Bowl game, not bowl game, but football game. Those were pretty well set. Like, there was a lot of activists were in place, and then there was a certain amount of money that was spent in it. Like, those were going to happen. Like, there's way too much investment. Like, no way, no how is anybody backing out. But this one, I really think is an example of, you just make a decision, and with the way I just think about it as like cost, risk versus reward. And I always just keep in my mind like the risk or the uncomfortableness. I'm going to be a little bit uncomfortable for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to get hassled by the cops or whatever. But the potential upside is just so huge that, really anything short of like, anything that's like other than something that would just cause harm to DXC, you're not going to just be outright violent. You're not going to do any serious law breaking, but pretty much anything short of that, when you have an opportunity like this, like, you need to be have that mental state, like, I'm going to make this happen. And so, like, this, for example, myself and Vanessa was her name, was running the camera. It was just the two of us to this rally, and we got there plenty early. We were all prepared, but there was 2 different lines, and there was some sort of confusion. And about 200 people, like, we were like one of the first few people, but somehow they did it backwards or whatever. And there was like 200 people that got in ahead of us. And so, we were just like, are you serious? Like, this is horrible. I got this banner. I got all these people, we really want to pull this off. But, I'm just like, we're going to do something. We got to go up there and do it. And everybody was clustered by the front. And so we kind of looked around, and we found this spot kind of off to the side where there were still people, there was still a certain amount of people there, but, we just kind of looked at it, kind of see what we could do, and eventually I found like these like teenage girls who were definitely there for Katy Perry and could not care less about Bill Clinton. So what you'll see here is eventually we worked it out, and I just said to them, I'm like, oh, I want to get a picture. So it was like, can I just get up there next to the gate and then do this? And it's funny, there was this other woman with them, I think must have been their mom or something, that kind of saw me fidgeting down here, getting my banner ready to go, and she's really suspicious, and she's like, okay, as long as it's not, wait, and then she sees you pull it, and she's like, oh, no. And then, yeah. So, anyway, go ahead.
I would also just emphasize the point about nonviolence. I think these disruptions have gotten, like, actually surprisingly favorable, or at least neutral coverage. And I think part of how that works is that it's just so clearly nonviolent. Like no one's really scared that Matt's going to do something, and so you really need to not just not be violent, but you need to embody that nonviolence, and you do not want to go for it in a way that will make us, even if it's not violent, that will make us not look nonviolent. Because like Erica Chenoweth, this political scientist who we've talked about a lot on our blog, has talked to us about how movements that are perceived as violent, even if they're not, can really fall apart because of that. So you really want to keep that in mind. And we have called off things the day of because we couldn't get close enough without jumping over someone or something that would put people at physical risk.
I had that. I actually went to a Trump rally where it was security. I moved because Trump's been getting disrupted by all sorts of people lately, so the security is like majorly stepped up. So I can attest to that too. Like, yeah, there are times where it's just absolutely impossible, but if at all possible, to do what you got to do.
What I want to say to you, all of you, Hillary's basically run on 4 big issues. One, most important, security. Are growingly shared that people actually have a chance to participate in. And this guy, he really thinks you came to see him. Give him a big hand and maybe he'll. Thank you. And we got it. Thank you. We got it. Will you please quit now?
Thank you, officer. Thank you.
No.
That was the same mom who's like, arrest him, asshole.
We all give him a hand. In this world, that's rare enough.
So yeah, that last reaction, Bill Clinton says, he didn't come here to badmouth anyone in this world, that's rare enough. I think that shows the
Although he says he couldn't hear what I was saying, I was pretty much badmouthing him because he used to be neither here nor there. He said, let's give this guy a round of applause. At least he stands for something. He's not here to badmouth anybody. Because Bill Clinton, he just can't hear me, and he just making states about animal rights. But I'm actually saying he used to stand up for what was right, blah blah blah, this kind of thing. But again with the Chris Christie thing, 1,000 times people more saw the CNN coverage, which was very good than actually what I was said right there. Okay, and another key thing is to go for it at whatever the key moment is at it. Like you can't whenever there's center stage, whenever the most attention is going to be there, depending on what the event is, you really just have to absolutely go for it at the key moment, because there's a huge difference between missing it and the camera pans away, or if you can get on the camera. And so we have one example where that worked out perfectly, and then Zach can discuss an example where it really didn't work. We played the Thanksgiving Day. So with this one, NFL is notorious, like they do not want to give any attention to this sort of thing whatsoever. So if you mistime it, certainly there'd be some things on Twitter and that sort of thing, but tens of millions of people were watching it live. And so we pretty much got there early for the game and spent the 3 hours of the game plotting exactly how to get this at the right time, the right situation, and get actually on camera. And go ahead.
They're down at 7. Here is Wynn, and he is followed up to the backfield.
And unfortunately, the camera was on the other side of where the front of that banner was, but the other one you see really well too. No. So and that was also like 4 or 5 seconds worth of us being on there, and yeah, got obviously huge press and stuff like that. And then you want to talk about Nathan's, how it kind of wraps it?
Yeah, so I mean, there was a disruption, I don't think anyone here was part of it, of Nathan's hot dog eating contest that collectively reorganized with a lot of DXC activists in July. And I think it was, it got a little bit of press, and I mean, certainly we disrupted a very violent event, and we got the attention of, I think there were thousands of people there watching, who were all very well aware of what was going on. But there was coverage all across the world of this event, and the organizers had looked at it and seen that in past years they broadcast the awards ceremony, and it seemed a little safer to disrupt the awards ceremony, because if you ran up during the contest, there was security around them and things like that. But the issue was the awards ceremony was just something they didn't have to broadcast. So when activists jumped on stage during the awards ceremony, they just cut to commercial. They didn't broadcast it because people don't need to see that. Whereas if we'd all run up in the middle of the contest, we would have probably stopped the contest, because it just wouldn't have been a fair contest anymore. And all of these articles would have had to talk about that, in newspapers far beyond the United States. So I think it was, given the information we had, it was a reasonable call, but I think this just shows that if you don't go for the central moment, you really lower the probability of it working. You really need to go when the camera's on, and it's the key moment.
Like the moment they can. Yeah, they can. Yes. All right, next one. So, and this is a lot less significant than all your preparation, but when it's over with, you want to be in contact with whoever it is that you're talking with DXC, because the press is very time sensitive, so you want to be on that immediately. And one thing to keep in mind, just that it's always going to be a roll of the dice. There's always going to be a million different variables, so you can prepare as well as you can prepare, and sometimes the security's too tight, or the camera's cut away from you, or whatever. So I've been a part of like the Donald Trump one I mentioned, where I went to, we had no shot, or there was this other one that was a presidential family forum with a bunch of candidates, and we got there, and it was a bunch of them up on stage talking, and as soon as they started, there were some immigration protesters or disruptors that went up there and did their thing. And unfortunately, that put security on high alert, not because they expected us, but they thought there might be more immigration people in the crowd. So security was all over us, so we didn't really make the impact with that one, despite almost a month of preparation. So that one didn't go well. So there's a lot to chance. So if you try something and it doesn't work out, I just wouldn't. That's just part of it. That's just kind of baked into it. And this hasn't happened to me, but a good thing to keep in mind, just in case, is to have your specific talking points in mind. And similar to with your banner, you keep it very animal-centered. Anything that's welfareist, or there can be construed as welfareist, or about the environment, or anything like that is what they're going to run with. Anything other than what we want them to run with, they'll take and run with it. So. And there's a lot of material that's already been put out on this, but even if you have to basically just repeat yourself that we're here representing the animals and every animal's right to life and freedom, that sort of a thing, you just stick to that, even if it feels kind of awkward that the person's asking you questions and you're completely deflecting. That's how we got to do it.
And I would also add that with the roll of the dice thing, there are a lot of members of this network who have poured significant resources into disrupting big events. I know of 2 examples I'm thinking of that just didn't pan out because of the reasons you're talking about. So, you have to know that all of these, glamorous disruptions, behind that there is all of us and everyone in the network who has been trying these things right and left, and it's only by all of us trying that these work. And I would also say, I don't think we should expect a disruption like this to suddenly change all these people's minds. Seeing that in the Bill Clinton speech, I don't think suddenly, a million people went vegan because of that. It would be great if they did, but I think what's happening is you get it on the table, and you had after the Bill Clinton disruption, there was an article in The Hill, which is like a publication that covers Capitol Hill and sort of political machinations, and they had just a brief mention that, while he spoke, there were animal rights hecklers in the background. And I think just the idea that like this is something that happens out there, that there are animal rights hecklers, it's just something that politicians may face, gets the issue on the table and sets a standard that this is not just a personal choice, this is an institutional problem that, and that a reckoning is coming. So I definitely, I think this is very important for getting the issue on the table. We should all be on the lookout, especially in a presidential year, but in any moment, to be able to make it clear that this is an issue we have to deal with.
For sure. Yeah, that's all I had. Did you want to show the Vilsack one?
Yeah, and I would also say I think the Tom Vilsack disruption is a good example of that when this was not a particularly big audience, but when you disrupt, when you confront some important figure, they've shown that political figures will massively overweight how representative the views of their local newspaper is. Whatever they read in the newspaper, they think everyone's reading that, when in fact that's usually not the case. And so I think there's a similar phenomenon where Tom Vilsack seeing one animal rights activist is going to overestimate how common that is. Now, obviously, he's only seen one of us. We saw a lot more of us. Even if it's a much higher percentage than there is out there in the public, that's going to start registering. Hi, Secretary Vilsack. You mentioned that agriculture has become far more efficient over the past 50 years. And with regard to animal agriculture, the reason this has become so much more efficient is that we view animals as things and as machines to be used to produce the most meat. It's well documented that on farms across America, chickens have been bred to be so grossly overweight they can barely support their weight. Their beaks are ripped off without anesthesia routinely, as are piglets' tails. And you are on the record supporting more subsidies for animal agriculture, defending animal agriculture left and right, whether it goes for pink slime or keeping animal products in the DAHS nutritional guidelines. I spent this past weekend at a sanctuary for animals rescued from farms, and I met a hen named Paprika. And you could tell, seeing Paprika, that she had a personality, that she had a life that she cared about, that she viewed the world with a fascination that parallels that of young children. She had a family, and she had love for her companions. Now, everyone in this room probably knows that animal agriculture is devastating for forests, for the climate, for the water supply. But most ignored is that there are innocent animals like Paprika who are routinely the victims of horrendous violence. And I want to ask you why you support horrendous violence against innocent animals like Paprika.
Okay, great question. First of all, I'm not willing to concede the premise of the question that farmers and livestock producers in this country are all abusing their animals. I'm not willing to concede that premise. I'm not willing to concede that poultry producers are producing chickens, all poultry producers are producing chickens as you described. There clearly may be some that do that, and obviously those folks are being called out. Those practices are being challenged. It's not necessarily appropriate to talk about animal welfare issues in the context of the dietary guidelines. And I think that's an important distinction and important for me to make. Fair enough. Look, there's an issue here, and obviously there's a difference of opinion, but I appreciate them raising it.
Did you already take it out?
We left. Yeah. I think in most of these cases we're on our way out well before they
I mean, in your case, you usually get dragged off.
Yeah.
I also, the number of legal issues, I mean, only one of these, I think, resulted in any legal issues. The Super Bowl. I mean, the Turkey Bowl one.
The farm show too.
Oh, the farm
Before
show.
recess.
Yeah, the farm show if anyone saw the farm show in Harrisburg, yeah, there were some issues.
But I think just 3 administrative citations.
Yeah, and
So it's not even
you know, this wasn't as huge of an event, but there was a fair in Connecticut. It's, I think, the oldest agricultural fair, maybe in the country. And we jumped on a stage during this country concert. It's a terrible concert, but yeah, Mike was one of the few activists who got infractions, and it was all dropped. So.
All right, any questions?
Do you want to maybe if people want to make more of a you want to do Q&A? You want to have more of a discussion about this? We've started doing more of a circle, so you can actually see each other. What do people prefer? Circle. So maybe you want to spread the.
With the live stream from Circle. I guess I should invite the last question from the live.
Yeah, we did.
While people are getting together, if you haven't seen, we have pastries, and hopefully you've gotten some of those. They're really, really good, and coffee and tea and everything. So also feel free to grab some of that.
Do you need to use the bottom one? One of the two viewers should hear the
I know.
So I'll probably try to keep like a loose stack as much as when needed. So just kind of like raise your hand and I'll call on people and I'll try not to break my hold. So yeah, people. Actually, I want to start out with. I'm gonna be selfish, which I'm not supposed to do. But like with the Clinton disruption, I don't know if people knew this, but I think Sapphire pointed out that the interpreter, the sign interpreter, started interpreting what Matt was saying. So even if you it was available for a wider audience than normal because of that.
Which is why we caption videos too.
Yeah.
So I just want to partially question, partially comment. I think these disruptions are amazing. People should also be very aware that it's totally okay to not do them yourself. You can be really helpful to these kinds of things happening by coming to these kind of spaces, supporting the activists that are doing this kind of work. And there's always so many opportunities to do activism regardless of where your comfort levels are. And if someone is like, wow, I want to do this, we can also support you doing that. So there's always a very wide range of ways to get involved, from zero to activism to disruption.
Yeah, I totally meant to include a comment on that. I think there's distinct personality types that I figured out after doing one of these. Oh, this is a rush. This is terrifying to yes, that's so satisfying. So yeah, some people are that way and some people are not, and there's no reason to force yourself into something which is utterly terrifying.
So I guess what I wanted to kind of also ask in relation to that is, I guess, how is your community? How are your communities with it? How much support do you feel like you got? How much interest do you feel like was spiked from within activist communities to take on, whether it's something as big as disruptions like this by themselves, or just taking on, more disruptions, more activism? Do you feel like it had a good effect within your activist communities?
I think there was a positive effect. My situation was not quite ideal for that, just because these were both of those events you saw that I did. Bill Clinton and Chris Christie were in Des Moines, and I am not in Des Moines, so it's kind of via Facebook. But when it's myself and kind of one other people that really, I don't know, sort of understand really kind of what DXC is and what DXC is about, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But I'm actually going to be living in Des Moines soon, so it's yeah. I mean, there's a definite positive there's definitely an uptick to be seen there, and there's people that kind of get it. But in Iowa, it's just a totally different culture. Everybody has family and friends in animal agriculture, and there's not the support around them. So it's definitely more of an uphill battle by a lot.
I would say I think social media is very important for support. Like I think the wider community and people in this room have been an important. I mean, I haven't done the sorts of things Matt's done, but I mean, even just like the Vilsack thing. I mean, seeing it shared and seeing how inspired people were beyond my community, I think was probably the most important thing. I mean, my community is you know, we've been around now for a while and we organize quite a bit, but we're pretty small. So I think that wider network is pretty important.
Oh, I think we have like Mike and then Amy.
Sure. So you mentioned that it's like a personality type thing, like whether or not you would want to do disruption. But I think it's also related to like your identity and like if you're a part of an oppressed group, it can be harder to do that. Like you were gently pulled down from the stage, but that might not have happened to a white man. Right?
Yeah, no, I definitely, that was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. It was, and some of you guys I've already kind of described this to, but yeah, like I'm up there, and if you watch up there, so I'm up there with the banner and stuff like that, and then I kind of see out of the corner of my eye, here come the police, and so I'm like bracing for like, I'm picturing like Brian, remember the clip with Brian Burns getting yanked? I'm like, I'm picturing like I'm gonna go down for a hard landing, I'm ready for that, and then they come up to me, and so I'm standing up here, and then they just come up to me, and then the police, and they just stop there, and they just kind of give me one of these. I'm like, no, I'll probably just milk this a little longer. I'm gonna probably keep going. So I keep talking, and then eventually they're just like tugging on my, just very gently, just like tugging on my jeans. And then, you know, and after a little while, I feel like I made my point, so I just kind of jumped down on my own.
Oh.
And, but yeah, I was totally floored at even after that, like how gentle it was. Like I come down, and then they kind of like grab my hands, they kind of walk me off, and literally like 3 or 4 seconds into like walking away with me, the cops are behind me and they're saying, so it's cool, everything's fine, nobody's mad. This is what they're telling me this. and then they bring me over, like they took my picture, they got my ID, and they just were like, okay, so don't come back here, it's gonna be a big fine or whatever for trespassing if you come back. They rolled my banner up for me. and then they shook my hand, and like within like less than 5 minutes, like I was on my way. Like I could not believe it. So,
Amy and then Priya.
Okay. Well, thanks, first of all. Amazing presentation. I just wanted to take issue with one thing that you said, Matt, and that was the idea that it's more difficult to find events in the Bay Area because we're known for being a progressive community and specifically progressive on animal rights. So one thing that really changed the way I see that is last year at the Netroots Nation. Netroots Nation is kind of the biggest national progressive media conference. And I was there when Black Lives Matters held the room, okay? So there was supposed to be a debate between O'Malley and Martin O'Malley and Bernie Sanders, and Black Lives Matters people who had been part of the conference for the preceding couple of days marched in and went up on the stage and held the room. Okay, it was. What was most effective about it is here you had a room full of people who think of themselves as being progressive, like we're the good guys, and this was very eye-opening. It was saying, you may think that you're the good guys, just like you may think that you care about animal welfare, but, think that you're not there yet, so I think that there are those kinds of opportunities for DXE, right here in the Bay Area. I mean, even progressive groups, people who we know care about animals. They may not be vegan, but they care about animal welfare. They're not yet at animal liberation, to really force them to take a hard look at themselves.
Yeah, I guess I was maybe I jumped the gun on that comment a little bit because I was mostly just saying based on me being here for the past week and Googling around, but
I think we were looking for big events to go disrupt like this weekend after doing this, and we couldn't really find anything. Whereas in Iowa, days in Iowa, you can disrupt 5 events in a day. The other thing I was going to add on this note was it was very interesting to me recently reading a book on the history of the gay rights movement, which used essentially this exact same tactic, especially in the early 70s, when they were just founding the Gay Liberation Front and the Gay Activists Alliance. They would do what they called zaps, which was effectively going into some big public figure's presentation and confronting that public figure. And this guy, Arthur Evans, would walk up to them and say, "Answer to the homosexual," really loudly, and like demand they talk to him. And they would go after progressive figures because they wanted to do exactly this. They wanted to, they forced them to confront the issue they were trying to avoid. So I think that can be a very effective tactic.
So I think it was recently that Wayne wrote a blog post about how vegans are making us, nice vegans are making us look bad. And I think this is such a great example because I remember all of these disruptions that, we were all promoting them, and I was just like looking at the variety of things that were being said about a lot of these things. And I just saw like a lot of people who necessarily don't share these things. They don't even agree. We're like just sharing this left and right in different groups and saying like, what do you think of this? I think this is just ridiculous. They're making us look so bad. And I was like, but you're talking about it. And for the football game, like my dad actually called me from India and he was like, yeah, I just want to know, like, can you check the TV for me or something? And I told him what happened, and then he like found all this news coverage on it and told everyone in India. So I was just it's fascinating. Like he was like, look, this is my daughter's group, and they were on this football, and I'm sure people in India didn't care, but my point is like, it's great that at the same time we have this like idea in our movement that's just like something we should not talk about, or like we shouldn't do because it makes us look bad, but at the same time there's so much dialogue generated, even by these very people who are saying those things. Okay, so anyway, that's my comment. I had a question about the football disruption because it was so exciting, just like how it happened. If you could just share how it was planned and how the activists jumped into the field.
Yeah, well, that was several months in the making. Wayne's idea actually, I think originally, and me and Zach worked on that, a lot, and so it was myself and 3 activists from Chicago, 1 activist from Milwaukee. And we got our tickets, and we bought the cheapest tickets we could get because the plan was to wait until there was some seats that are clearing out, and we were hoping the game would be a blowout, which it was. So a lot of people leave, so it's totally clear in the front towards the end of the game. So we spent basically 3 hours like I said, like we had this ongoing dialogue of like, okay, what are you thinking? What looks good to you? What do you, different things. So we were sitting we had our binoculars, we were up in the upper deck, we were kind of like scoping out security points like this. And like when we first went there, we didn't really know exactly what the layout was. And we all had our tennis shoes, and it was like, I have a clip on my phone of us doing like our rehearsal, like that morning, like before we were going to go to the football game. We're all out in front of our hotel room with these banners, and we're like practicing jumping because we thought we were gonna have to jump down off of this thing. So I'm like, don't hurt, use your legs, don't lock your knees up, this kind of a thing. So that's what we thought it was. So we were glad to see that there were basically in the 4 corners of the field. That's one of them is what we used, not in the 4 corners, but about the 15-20 yard line on each end. There were just these little stairways that go down, and they have a security person that's posted up on each one of them. And we were just kind of watching to see like which security guard kind of seemed like they didn't really pay attention too much, that sort of thing. And eventually we, settled on where we did. And this security guard, we got very lucky here too, because most of them are standing and they're facing towards the crowd, and so that's going to be really tough to do anything with. Sometimes they kind of turn around, and the game was a blowout, so there wasn't much of a crowd anymore. So it just kind of, there's just this atmosphere that things are just kind of dying down. It's not as exciting as the game was earlier. So this security guard here, she was turned the opposite direction, not facing towards us. She was sat down, and this other woman came by, and she seemed like she was like a supervisor or something, and she like pointed at her and did like this, like stand up. but then this woman like shrugged her off and just like, I don't know, just like ignored her, and she just was still sitting there. Yeah, probably. And so anyway, so she's there sitting there on these steps. So there's a stairway that leads out in the field, and she's there sitting there. And you know, I'm trying to sit over here and watch, like, okay, these guys are gonna come up, they're gonna run their play. It's gonna take about 10-15 seconds for them to do that, about 10-15 seconds for the rest of this. And I was the only football fan amongst us, so I was kind of in charge of the timing of it. So the four of them are seated next to me in the seats there, and I'm sitting on the end, and I just tell them the signal is, once I get out of my seat and go sit down, that's the signal. You guys just go. You guys, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to look. You don't have to hesitate, whatever. I'm going to get out of my seat and sit up here, and I'm going to video, and you guys are going to go. And so when I thought the time was right, I got up there, and I sat down, and they come running by, and she was so taken aback. Like, they just do not think this is coming. So here she's sitting. One person comes by, and she kind of looks up, a little curious. The second person, like, what again? By the third person, she's got her arm out, but all of them just flew past her. So we got really lucky with that. And I mean, there was a couple things that I was actually supposed to, because I don't know if you've seen these Thanksgiving Day games, but afterwards they usually do this whole like thing where they talk to the player of the game or whoever did the best, and they have like this turkey that they eat. And so there was, you know, a camera here, and then the players are sitting there eating it, talking about it live for like 2 or 3 minutes. For whatever reason, they didn't do it this time. So like that was, you know, I don't know, I guess it just like kind of a neurotic perfectionist, like wanted to get that, you know, if we could have got that too, like that would have been like extra super amazing, but they just did like an interview. Plus the security seemed to be like majorly stepped up right then, I think, with the whole atmosphere set up. So I didn't get to do that, which was actually nice because they needed somebody to bail them out of jail. So it was good that I was there.
And Brian Burns had written up a press release, and as soon as it happened, he had like a list of people to send it to. So that's always a key part too. Yeah. I think he's giving me too much credit, because all I did was call like 3 months in advance and be like, you should do this. And then I didn't think it was going to happen, so I was like sleeping when the game happened. And I woke up, and my chapter organizer Tiffany was there, and I checked my email. I was like, oh my god, they did it. And she was like, yeah, you didn't see it. I was like, no, I was asleep.
Yeah. No, it was. You know, there was times where like there were things that you know we wanted to get a kickoff play, for example, because those are more like the play takes longer to develop, so we would have probably had more time on the screen if we had done that. And the banner was facing the wrong direction on that one, so like there was a couple things that could have went a little bit better, but there was a whole lot of things that could have went a whole lot worse. So that was good.
Double-sided banner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also say on Priya's point that like I think this is the way vegans should look. We should not look like we're happy. We should look like we're really pissed and we're prepared to disrupt the hell out of things to make that point.
We're gonna have Molly, and then I think we'll make announcements and take a break. I don't think we have anything else planned for right after this, so we can continue to hang out and talk either as a large group or a small group. But
well, maybe I don't know if there were web feed. Well, I don't know if they did that question.
Did you want to check, and then we'll have Molly first? Sure, Molly first.
There you go. Okay, so that's an interesting segue because I was just observing the very strong difference between the two approaches, especially in yours to Tom Vilsack and your Bill Clinton, and then the Super Bowl, and thinking about, you know, the value in all these different styles. Because I think, you know, different people respond to different approaches, and so of course we should be angry, we are, but I also feel like there's a lot of value in like the calm, direct, conversational approach that
the words are pretty angry though.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really nice balance, right? The content is there, but the delivery can also be.
Yeah, no, I think part of it was like I don't like the way like Zach can like have like the whole thing down and like keep his train of thought and not buckle. Like I don't, because in a lot of ways with these disruptions or other disruptions at restaurants, like it actually, to me, it's easier to do it when there's like you're up against something, like somebody's resisting you or people are booing you or whatever else. Like it's just like, okay, this just like brings out like the natural, you know, like the right kind of that sort of thing. So I don't know, it makes it easier.
I think it probably in our case is less of a difference between our natural style and more just context. Like with the Vilsack, I had all day long to keep going on, and you know with the Bill Clinton thing, I mean he couldn't just stand there and articulate a speech that everyone would hear.
Yeah.
Wilson, do we have anything from the interwebs?
There was a lot of like resentment that there was no clear go vegan message. I don't know if you can address that. The rational, your basic message was just like, you know, because there's no go vegan message, people who empathize with animals would be lost, and there's no clear direction for a message.
Yeah.
Which I disagree with.
So yeah, to people out there, there's a lot of really good information I would recommend, like on the I would recommend like the DXC website. There's a lot of good posts on the whole idea, and basically the theory on it is are we trying to influence behaviors, or are we trying to influence beliefs? And the idea being that there's a lot of folks out there that will maybe kind of come a little ways on their behavior as far as meatless Mondays or vegetarian or maybe even vegan, without really attaching that to this basic issue of animals' rights, animals having a right to their lives. So the vegan message, if you follow through on the animal liberation message, you know, vegan is just implicit in that, but it's more of changing the world, changing the culture, changing the norms, rather than like this individual over here changes the way, you know, we eat. So it's a difference in philosophy. But yeah, I would recommend checking that out.
I would say two things. One is we want to focus, our focus is on institutions, and you know, obviously in some contexts that's going to mean a go vegan message, but when you're talking to Tom Vilsack, who has the power to, you know, support, he makes all these regulations about industry, you know, him going vegan is not the goal with him. I mean, that would be great if Tom Vilsack went vegan, but more important would be stop supporting this violence through all these subsidies, through, you know, just giving industry everything you possibly can, through, you know, total unenforcement. We want the Department of Agriculture to be fighting this industry, not supporting it. And so the Go Vegan message isn't exactly the one I think that's going to be the most effective with him. And then the second thing is, because we're focused on that institutional thing, it can very easily distract and give the media a way to not talk about animals, because like with the media wanting to talk about the environment, they would love to sort of marginalize protesters as being an out group so that no one has any sympathy with them. And if you can focus on public sympathy with animals, I think you can capture that more effectively.
Is there anything else there, Wilson?
This person, let's say, you're belittling the power of living vegan. Belittling, like underestimating the power of being vegan.
Well, it's certainly not like, you know, it's I think everybody in the room is vegan. I think it's kind of, it's just a tactical, you know, calculation that there's going to be a certain amount of discomfort, but there's, you know, considering what's at stake and considering what the potential upside is, that there's really a kind of an end to justify the means there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think when an article prints, you know, there were some vegans chanting in the background, people just dismiss it. But when it says there are animal rights hecklers in the background, I think people listen a little bit more. I mean, obviously, animal rights activists have also been marginalized, but I think it's less of a clear, like, distinct identity.
I guess we can take these last two comments probably. Amy and Rebecca, do you want to go first, Rebecca?
Mine's more focused on kind of like our previous statement of how like kind of like your privilege and your race kind of enables you to do these kinds of dangerous or like seemingly dangerous disruptions. Like how can like for myself, like I feel like, you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing something like that, or like other people maybe in our cohort wouldn't feel comfortable doing something like that. Like how can we, I guess, empower ourselves so that we start to be able to do these kinds of stunts where it's like, you know, I may not be treated so nicely on stage, or like.
I mean, there's nothing. I don't think there's nothing you can do that's gonna erase that. If you have more of a group, I think that's one thing. And for me, you know, like especially going into like a Trump rally, and I know like this is it's just a nice little side benefit to think like if they are aggressive towards you, that makes them look bad and that does benefit us. So nobody wants that to happen, but to whatever extent that does happen, there's definitely an upside on our people will sympathize with us. I know going into the Bill Clinton one, I had conversations with Wayne and Zach, and this was and it was kind of serious. Like, okay, we're dealing with a former president here. He's going to have Secret Service. You're going to do something that's going to cause some alarm. So just some practical things. You saw me, like, I had the banner it was kind of awkward the way I had to hold it, but I had the banner in my hands, and then I was also on this gate thing, and then pushed myself up. So like as soon as you see me, you see my hands. Like I'm not a threat. My hands are here. I'm holding a banner. Like try to be as obvious about what you are, and that you're not a threat as soon as possible.
I would also just say ease into it. I mean, like the Vilsack thing is a lot. It takes a lot less nerves than like the Bill Clinton thing, and I don't think the Vilsack thing would entail that much of a risk because you're just standing in the audience and asking a question. So I think you can sort of, ease into it, and probably by that get like a sense of how risky it is for you to participate, how much of a threat you feel.
I mean, Araceli was there for the Chris Christie one, and she jumped up on the stage too, so you could message her and ask her. But we also have Priya right here, who's disrupted a number of things, and I think you've been targeted quite a bit, like at some of these disruptions. But you also, like when Brian Burns got like basically tackled to the ground, we were all there. There were a large number of us there. But do you want to talk about what, like, as a woman of color, like what Rebecca is talking?
I feel like I just do something that just makes people get really upset. So I don't know, maybe that's just something inherent. I don't know. But well, yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that question because I feel like I'm kind of like Matt. Like I kind of thrive off of those situations. It's like exciting for me. So even if that does happen, it's not like my judgment is so tough. Like I don't know. I can't figure out what's making it happen. It's probably me though. I feel like I do certain things that might be too aggressive or yeah, I don't know. You might touch
There's also Cat Roberts and their people.
Yeah. I mean, she got grabbed right away though. But anyway. Yeah.
I wonder if that's a piece of female socialization that we're not people admit are socialized as female. And like I know that I have this inner sense that if I express any anger, I've done something bad. Mm-hmm. So we have that self like, whereas if potentially someone socialized as a male, that's like, oh good, you're being strong, you're being assertive. So I feel concerned about hearing that you like see yourself like that because I imagine you're not. Maybe I haven't seen you in action in that way, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think that Bill Clinton. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about anger, like I think the anger tone of Bill Clinton is about as angry as it could possibly come off, and it wasn't even nobody. I mean, I guess to some extent people couldn't really hear me, but like, nobody like criticized like, oh, you're just some angry whatever. Like I didn't really get that sense. So yeah, there's a discrepancy there.
We'll have Amy for.
I'll pass.
Cool. So announcements. So I'll make a couple of announcements, and then if other people want to make announcements too. My main announcement is that we have some more openings for Sanctuary Sunday for tomorrow. So if you would like to go, please let me know right away. Do you have something?
Yeah, there's another announcement. People might have seen I sent out an email to our community mailing list, and if you're not on that, you can talk to any one of the organizers about getting on it. But we were considering maybe a shift in time for meetups. So if you haven't filled out that survey, please do, but you can also just come up and like talk to us as well. But right now they're at 10. There were actually earlier ones at 9:30, and we were considering a shift to 11. Just because we have heard some feedback from people that 10 can be a little early, especially if you have to travel from farther away, like South Bay or Peninsula, and people often want to sleep in a bit on Saturdays. So I can, if people want to like talk more about it, please like come reach out to us. But it would probably also change a little bit of what we do. Like we might have more potlucks because we're getting closer to like the lunchtime around noon. And yeah, so if you have any thoughts, please fill out the survey, talk to us, and yeah.
I've got a list going. I can pass around a mailing list if you're not on the mailing list and you'd like to be. Just put your first, last name, and email address.
We can also do it on our phones or computers as well,
great.
really easily, just right on our homepage. So that would probably be the easiest way to sign up. So just come and talk to organizers. Can you raise your hand?
Yeah,
Or,
if you could help someone get on the mailing list, can you raise your hand?
or not? Yeah, anybody who just so do that. Okay.
You just pass the
No,
phone.
you can,
Yeah.
you can pass that. You can pass that.
Well, it's.
It's okay. Some people like the way it is.
That's right.
My other announcement is that we're gonna have another Sanctuary Sunday on February 7th to Animal Place. So if you would like to go to that, please let me know. I just put the event page up this morning, and I'll send you an email out this afternoon to community. So, yeah.
And that's Rescue Ranch, not Grass Valley.
Yeah,
So
that's
an hour
Rescue
away,
Ranch
not 3 hours.
in Vacaville.
Which is a
They
lot
want us
shorter.
there at 8, so we'll leave just before 7 to get there on time. And then, and are there any other announcements? Do you want to talk about the day of action next week, Priya?
Yeah, there's we are doing our monthly day of action, which is happening on Sunday, January 31st, and we're meeting at 11 a.m. at Jesse Square. We'll do a short practice, and then we will go and do our action. So hopefully everyone can be there, and also bring your friends and ask others to join as well, because we do this every month to, basically what Matt and Zach talked about, put the issue of animal rights on the table, and we'll reach out to press. So it'll be a great action. We'll be delivering a letter to animals asking why businesses to stop exploiting and hurting animals. And right after, we're going to be going to Gary Vegan Sundays to socialize, hang out, and also meet any potential vegans and activists who will be part of our community.
We'll see. Gene and Sherry have your liberation bands.
Oh,
so
yes.
pick it up and then we'll want to ask for this forward. So.
Cool. So I think we'll call it a day, but you're welcome in terms of like sort of a more formal setting, which I hope this is still pretty casual for us. But like have some really good pastries. If you can make a contribution to them, to the space, then please do. And hang out and mingle. So, thank you, Zach and Matt. For